Coach. I'm your coach, Melania Johnson. I am the president of Be Smart Coaching, a leadership development practice, and I am a certified coach, among other things. So let's get right into this topic today because it's on fire. It's a hot topic. I think it's a timely topic. From bias to empathy, addressing fear of the angry Black person. Before I get started, I'm going to put in. I hope I'm going to be able to put this in the chat. I this live stream is to be able to answer any questions that folks may have that they would like me to answer, challenges they might have, or situations that they might like to have addressed, and I can do that confidentially in our next upcoming live stream. So I put the link into the form that you can fill out to submit your questions. So from bias to empathy, addressing fear of the angry Black person. So before I begin, let's just put it out there. When we start talking about race, it can be an uncomfortable conversation. And what I'm here to tell you today is that I'm not going to make it any less comfortable for you, uncomfortable for you. It's not my role to do that. As in terms of the work that I do, I'm here to bust up the status quo, and that means change. And change oftentimes makes people uncomfortable. So if you are a manager and you find some of this makes you uncomfortable, that's okay, because it's a necessary part of your job to be an expert in managing people. Part of your job and expertise comes on the technical side, but then there's another part that has everything to do with the people that you manage, understanding their motivators, demotivators, understanding how to create a psychologically safe environment for them to work optimally. So we're going to press forward even though it might be uncomfortable. Understand, when we're talking about race, there's nothing more uncomfortable than to have to manage systemic racism and bigotry and the other things that Black folks have to endure in order to be a part of these United States. So with that being said, I remember I worked for a person, and they kept saying this, and it didn't dawn on me what they were talking about. They said, Melania, you're so non-threatening. When I was interviewing you, you were so, you're so non-threatening. And they said this over and over again, and it didn't dawn on me until I had been, in the position for a while, that I realized that non-threatening meant that they didn't expect any pushback from me, that I was going to be a go along, get along type of employee, and that I was going to, stay in my place and not challenge things. And I thought to myself, wow, this person really doesn't know who I am, because that's what I'm all about. I'm all about changing things. That's why I got into the work that I'm in. But then I have to, now I want you to, again, we're talking about going from bias to empathy. I then had to say to myself, wait a minute, do you look at all candidates through a lens of threat level? Does everybody, are you looking to stock your company with people who don't threaten you? Or is that just a lens that you put when you use to look at Black candidates? Again, what part of the work that we have to do is to be careful where our biases are. And so I want to take you on a little bit of a journey as to what it feels like to be an African American, and how to navigate being an African American in the United States. We want to talk about reasons to be angry, right? Um, you know, in the current atmosphere and environment that we live in, when you start talking about systemic racism, you hear all sorts of things like being woke, and you want to shut it down, and there's no such thing as systemic racism, but there is. There's a wage gap. In 2020, Black people made 20% less than their white counterparts. I think Black men made 50 cents on the dollar of their white male counterparts. Now I want you to put that also into perspective. So I'm sitting in a conference room at a meeting with, you know, many of my white colleagues, right? And the chances of me being underpaid in comparison to them, even though I may have the same skill level or more, or the same education or more, or additional certifications and additional experiences and whatnot, but there's a big chance that I'm going to be underpaid in comparison to them. So also put that into a picture that not only are we going to underpay you, when we entered into this agreement with you, our goal was to undervalue you. We want you to smile and be non-threatening while this is going on. I want us to put it into perspective. 14% of Black folks are in the workforce, right? But you know, only 7% are in managerial positions. And when you start to go higher up that a hierarchy, you're then only looking at 4 or 5% of representation at that level. Right. So not only am I going to get underpaid, most likely, I'm also have a lesser chance of being promoted. And what that equates to is wealth. I have less opportunity to build wealth than my white counterparts. And that also leads to generational wealth as well that is reduced. But there is no area that we can look at that race does not impact African Americans. Again, I'm saying this not to complain or to whine. I want you to understand so that you can have some empathy about who and what you are managing and leading. You know, the National Association of Medicine said that Black folks are less likely to get uh, uh, um, equal treatments and have worse outcomes than their white counterparts. And that has nothing to do with comorbidities, has nothing to do with insurance, it has nothing to do with class. It just means that just by virtue of being black, you are going to not be taken care of as well as your white counterparts. Okay, well, let's move to the banking sector. Well, black folks are less likely to get mortgages and remortgage than their white counterparts. All right, let's say I want to sell my home. There have been cases after cases after cases where Black people have had their home appraised, right? And then they get a you know they get a quote and they're like, that doesn't seem right. And so they have de-blackified, I just made that name up. They de-blackified their homes, removing all of anything, any artifacts or anything that could identify their ethnicity, and then and then have a white friend stand in as the homeowner and have an appraiser come. And in one situation, the couple sued the realtor, the realty company. They were appraised at their house value at 900 plus $1,000 as they when they represented themselves, but when they had a white person pretend to be the homeowner, the value of their appraised home went to over $1.4 million. These are the things that Black people have to deal with on a daily basis just to live in this country. Let me just say this to you: when you talk about you know, feeling threatened and aggressive and tones and those kinds of words associated with Black people, I would I would challenge you to challenge yourself to have conversations with people that you know who are Black and on your team, in your organization, and ask them to tell you some stories about the number of times that they felt bigotry or racism, or they have been disrespected, and they will regale you with numerous stories. What I'm trying to say to you is that we turn the other cheek more often than you think. I worked in Okay, I'm hoping I didn't lose you. Got a signal that they had lost connection. I worked in an office with someone. I was having a conversation with a woman. We shared walls, and we talked to each other, and we could hear each other. And she was talking about a situation where some people had done some work for her mom, and they said, it was kind of half-hearted job, and describing how they did the job, she used the N word as a part of her description, or this phrase. You know what I did? I did nothing. I said nothing. I continued the conversation like she hadn't said it, because I knew that, one, this is probably a word that she uses when she's not around me. Two, she forgot I was Black. These kind of stories folks can tell you all the time about how it is to be Black in America. The reason why I'm doing this today is because just a few weeks ago, a young man, a Black young man, made a mistake and rang a doorbell and was shot twice, once in the head by a man who felt threatened because a Black man was at his door. The threats that white folks feel about Black people doesn't stop at the workplace door. It comes with you. Just like all of those situations that described in terms of being discriminated against, come with me when I walk through my door. Those are my realities. What we have to do is we have to check ourselves, because violence and bigotry is a part of what I've had to deal with. And that has an effect on you. Does it make me angry? Yeah, anyone should be upset about injustice. But also, what I'm also asking you to do as a manager is to raise your social and emotional intelligence, as well as your intercultural competency. Emotions happen at work. People become angry. I can't remember what the percentage was. Like, I think it might have been 9% of people feel angry at work. It was part of a Gallup poll, survey. They feel sad too. They feel a lot of emotions at work. As a manager, you're tasked with being able to have high social and emotional intelligence level to be able to not only manage your own emotions, but also manage the emotions of others. So when I talk to you about, these things that have happened to us, and again, I want you to understand that we all have biases. All of us. I have bias. But what's important is, as a manager who has power and authority, to understand what those biases are, identify them. Why do I think, the way that I think? Why was it important for my former manager to when they hired me, that I be non-threatening? What bias fed into that necessity, that need, that belief? Why is it when someone has a dissenting view that feels threatening? These are the questions you have to ask yourself. Wonder if someone is passionate about something, or wonder if am I hypersensitive about things? Do I hold people to the same standard? Now, if somebody who was of a different ethnic group or race said the same things that I did, would it be taken in the same way? Would it be seen as a threat? And what I'm talking about is not, accepting disrespect. Disrespect is one thing, but having a different communication style is another. So what I'm asking folks to do is lead with some empathy, and to get curious enough to say, wow, you know what, I'm feeling something from you. Tell me more about what you're thinking, what you're feeling. I feel some passion, behind what you're saying. Help me to understand. This is what is required, not to, ask people to mask themselves, because Black people have been masking themselves for years. I mean, think back in the day, folks used to put on, blackface. Well, we have to, sort of put on whiteface, so to speak, in order to assimilate. The expectation is not that we come and be authentic, it's that we assimilate, and that we tamp down who we are, and that whatever you do, don't frighten people. Don't challenge the status quo. Don't have an opinion that's contrary. to others. And if someone is angry, okay, can we get to the source of the anger? As opposed to labeling you the angry black person, what is it stemming from? Because black people are not the only people who are angry at work. So what can managers do? You can recognize your bias. Start there. You have them. Have conversations with people and listen attentively to figure out, where your beliefs come from. And listen without judging. I shared that information with folks at the beginning because Black people are not looking for, special treatment. We're not looking for your sympathy. We're looking to walk into work environments that treat us well, that treat us with respect, that are equitable, that allow us to bring our wealth of experience and perspective to the table that is when leveraged correctly in terms of diversity helps organizations increase their performance compared to their competitors by 36%. That's what we're asking. Not very long ago, just recently, someone was appointed to the University of Virginia's board, specifically to dismantle its DE&I efforts. He's been shown to be racist and homophobic. One of the things when I read this article that it said, one of the complaints about diversity, equity, and inclusion is, we let these folks in and then we lower our standards. Well, let me clutch my pearls. So when you hire Black folks or when you make things equitable, that means that you have lowered your standard. We get tired of being looked at through that lens. Because as African Americans, you know that if you are ever put into a role, that you have to perform at a higher level. Because if you do, because you're going to be scrutinized differently. Again, I ask you to look at your biases. You're going to be held to a different standard than your white counterparts. And if you mess up, then that means there's not going to be any more people looking like you in a position again. This is a burden that most white people don't have to carry. But as African Americans, we do. We know that our performance means that others will not have an opportunity if we fail. That's why being called angry, that's why being called threatening, intimidating is a death knell. Educate yourselves. Number four, what you can do, educate yourself, read books, attend workshops, have meaningful conversations with people who don't look like you and ask them to share their experience so that you can understand what another human being on this planet is going through. This is what I've had to do. This is what every Black person has had to do to manage themselves in this world in the United States. We've had to understand the white culture in order to survive and thrive. We're just asking that you give us the same courtesy of getting to know us as human beings. Have empathy. I can have empathy for your walk, have empathy for my walk. I am by no means saying that your walk is not difficult. Everybody, to some extent, has challenges in their lives. Mine are different than yours. Understand them and take action. Number five, use your position as a manager to create an inclusive, psychologically safe workplace and culture. Take the steps to address racism, discrimination, unfair policies. Become the ally. Be the person in the meeting when somebody says, "Well, oh, Melania, your tone. Well, hold it now. Your tone. You're getting kind of aggressive." You might be the person that says, "Well, I don't think she's being aggressive. I think she's communicating and expressing herself." Melania, please go on. Communicate. Express yourself. Be that person. Again, not looking for special treatment, but looking to be treated as a human. And that doesn't happen unless we can identify our biases and treat people with some measure of empathy. So with that being said, I'm going to bid you adieu. I'm going to thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to part with our my company motto that was named after my mother. A quote from her and the namesake of my company. In life, you can either work hard or you can work smart. I suggest you work smart. So I'm hoping that today I shared something with you that will help you to work a little bit smarter to make life a little bit better. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great weekend, and I hope to see you next week. Bye bye.